In this podcast episode, Eva Vlaardingerbroek and Anthony Lee focus on the recent farmer protests in Germany and the Netherlands and their broader political implications. Eva Vlaardingerbroek describes the protests in Germany as a significant movement involving blue-collar workers, farmers, and ordinary citizens. The catalyst for these demonstrations was the government's decision to eliminate tax breaks on agricultural diesel, which compounded a general sentiment of disenfranchisement among the populace. The protests have seen a diverse group of participants, including truckers and middle-class citizens, all united by the impact of the government's policies on their lives. The political landscape in the Netherlands experienced a seismic shift earlier in the year, partly due to similar protests. A far-right party gained substantial popularity, securing a quarter of all votes. Vlaardingerbroek suggests that the farmers' uprising has been pivotal in changing public opinion, making people less susceptible to the mainstream media and establishment's intimidation tactics. The podcast touches on the concern that the term far-right is being normalized. It has been used to label ordinary citizens and working-class groups, diluting its meaning and potentially allowing genuine far-right groups to leverage the populist movement for their own ends. Anthony Lee discusses the adverse effects of green policies in Germany, such as the farm-to-fork strategy. These policies, which aim to reduce farmland use and promote organic farming, are causing economic strain and a decline in living standards for the working class. Additionally, the government's decision to shut down nuclear power plants has led to energy shortages and further economic challenges. The democratic nature of the protests is emphasized, with the podcast highlighting that the people are exercising their democratic rights to protest against a government that seems to no longer represent their interests. Vlaardingerbroek points out that the protests are a manifestation of ordinary, hardworking citizens' concerns about their livelihoods and the impact of government policies. Eva Vlaardingerbroek shares her experience of being labeled as the shield maiden of the far right by Dutch mainstream media. She argues that the term far-right has been overused to the point of being applied to anyone with right-wing or conservative views. The conversation then shifts to the green agenda in Germany, with Anthony Lee criticizing the unfair taxation of diesel and the negative effects of the Green Deal on food production and import. He also comments on the demoralizing nature of the green agenda, which often portrays human ambition as destructive. Eva and Anthony express frustration with the government's lack of response to the protests and their failure to address the concerns of the people. They discuss the demoralizing effects of the green agenda and the dehumanizing language used by the government to justify their policies. The podcast concludes with a call for civil disobedience and the need to challenge laws that restrict certain forms of protest. Eva and Anthony stress the importance of standing up against oppressive government policies and reclaiming the rights of the people. The podcast provides an overview of the political challenges in Europe, focusing on the plight of farmers and truckers due to government policies. The guests discuss the impact of the globalist utopian green agenda and the 2030 United Nations agenda on agriculture and transportation. The importance of peaceful protests is underscored as a means to address political issues. The recent demonstrations in Germany and the Netherlands are highlighted as effective examples of civil action that have brought critical issues to the forefront without resorting to violence. The conversation explores the rise of populist movements in Europe, particularly as a reaction to migration policies and the influence of far-right parties. The growing support for these movements among the working class and rural communities is seen as a response to government failures and the erosion of traditional values. The guests emphasize the significance of democratic processes in overcoming political challenges. They advocate for electoral participation and coalition building as essential for effecting change within legal frameworks. The potential for democratic means to address the issues faced by farmers and truckers is acknowledged, along with the necessity for continued pressure on the government. The podcast concludes with reflections on the future of protests and political activism in Europe. The need for ongoing peaceful demonstrations and the potential for increased governmental pressure are discussed. The role of civil disobedience and the power of collective action are highlighted as key factors in shaping political outcomes. In summary, the podcast offers insights into the protests in Germany and the Netherlands, the impact of green policies on the working class, and the potential political implications of the populist movement. It raises important questions about the normalization of far-right agendas and the democratic principles underlying the protests, while also emphasizing the importance of civil disobedience and standing up against oppressive policies.